Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure unto the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson. I'm going to start it off in Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. And woe means destruction, and this is speaking of World War I, World War II, both of which have already happened, and World War III, which for all intents and purposes, you can say, we're in the beginning of it right now. And there will ultimately be a draft during World War III, especially with these Western nations, over in Ukraine, because they've got so many men dying over there. They've extended the age to get older men. They're grabbing men with disabilities, anybody they can to send to the meat grinder, the front lines of that battle. And once, Russia, truly goes to, Russia, China, those other, Iran, truly go to war against the nations of the West, NATO, that draft is going to be put in place. And I opened up the video with this verse to preface a few articles showing that these different Western nations are getting prepared accordingly. The first article I'll be going to is on themirror.com titled U.S. Military Draft Disqualifications List Exemptions Amid Fears Over World War III, that third woe. A newly updated version of the requirements for people to be drafted into the U.S. Army have been released, sparking questions about a potential war in the future. And when you know biblical prophecy, it's not a potentiality, but an inevitability. Questions are resurfacing about the U.S. military draft after lawmakers approved an updated version of the National Defense Authorization Act that includes automatic selective service registration for some Americans. Under current law, all male U.S. citizens and male immigrants ages 18 to 25 are required to register with the selective service system, which maintains a list of people who could be called for military service if a draft were reinstated. The new provision would allow the federal government to automatically register eligible men rather than requiring them to sign up themselves. It comes after it emerged one specific group of Americans will be drafted first if World War III apocalypse breaks out. So there you have it. New provisions they're planning on putting in place would automatically register eligible men. And, what is considered eligible men? Whatever is required when a major war breaks out. And, with especially whenever the U.S. has done something against Iran, back during Trump's first administration when he assassinated Qasem Soleimani, or back in June, with what was it? Or was it July? I think it was Operation Midnight Hammer, where the U.S. struck those Iranian nuclear facilities. And then what? All this, the situation going on right now with the U.S. and Iran and Israel. You always see it, trend on social media like TikTok, where people are saying, or especially Gen Z are saying, look, I don't want to get drafted. I don't want to go. And then, you've got people that are in the military complaining about, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. Well, hey, Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai has signed up you Americans for World War III. And there's nothing a lot of you will be able to do about it. When you go over to the so-called Middle East or Western Asia, which is going to be the main and final confrontation of World War III, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat in Joel chapter 3, the War of Armageddon. That's going to be your final resting place. But before we continue, This is Second Esdras in the Apocrypha, chapter 16, verses 33 to 34. The virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. Women, mourning because they don't have men to be with or to take care of or protect them. Why? Verse 34, in the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, and their husbands shall perish of famine. Many men, especially in the United States of America, are going to die in World War III after they're drafted and sent over there, leaving a dearth of women over in the States, which is what going to be a part that's going to play into Isaiah 4:1, where it says 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and make our own apparel, only take away our reproach. And who's that man specifically? A man of the Lord, a man of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. This is Isaiah chapter 3. I'm going to read verses 25 to 26. Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty men in the war, that third woe. And when you read up in this chapter, it's speaking to the women of the nation of Israel, specifically here, the women of the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, so-called black or Negro woman. But hey, this is going to apply to, all you Israelite women, a lot of your men, a lot of you so-called Negro, Latino, Native American men going to get drafted, go fight and die over in World War III. And verse 26, and her gates shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. And when you go to the next chapter, immediately it's what? Isaiah 4:1, 7 women taking hold of one man. So there's about to be a massive culling of men, very soon. And one of the main things is going to be war. But now I'm going to jump down to this part right here. Current law applies only to men. Women are not required to register, though that could change, Fox LA reports. The Senate Armed Services Committee recently advanced its version of the defense bill that would expand selective service registration to women. The House version does not include the provision. Any change would need to be approved by both chambers of Congress and signed into law by the president. The Selective Service System says it is prepared to expand registration if Congress changes the law. And that's another aspect that's going to play into World War III. Not only are a lot of men going to get drafted and die, but hey, there's going to come a point where women are going to get drafted as well. And you've already got a lot of Western European countries putting laws on the books for women to get drafted. I know Germany in particular, and I think, Finland, maybe Sweden. I know it's a lot of those Nordic countries, but they already, got it in place for women, to be instituted in a draft if war breaks out. And they're pushing it over here in the United States of America as well. And, for you women that are already in the military, they're going to find yourself in a foxhole with the man during World War III or a bunch of men. You're going to be nothing more than a barracks bunny and look that up, because, men are made for war and women are made for nurturing. So you're just going to be something to pass the time, when they're over there, which on a quick side note, down here in New Orleans, you got the National Guard down here because, New Year's just passed and Mardi Gras is coming up. So they're doing enhanced security because, they don't want anything like what happened during New Year's on Bourbon Street last year to take place. And, you got men National Guard and you see a few women National Guard. And, hey, they looking pretty thick from that military training. So, again, you women that do get drafted and that do go fight in World War III, before you get sent back to the spirit world, you're going to be nothing more than a barracks bunny. But that's neither here nor there. But, yeah. Let me get actually I'll go to my next article on RT.com because we were dealing with America, but let's go to the other side of the pond. UK to list 65-year-olds as reservists amid Russia threat claims, Telegraph says. British officials have claimed the country could be dragged into a full-scale conflict with Moscow, which the UK, the US, these other NATO nations will be dragged into war with Russia, China. The UK government is preparing to expand the call-up age for reservists to ready the army for a potential war with Russia, the Telegraph reported on Thursday, citing sources. According to the newspaper, the plan would raise the maximum age at which retired soldiers could be recalled from 55 to 65. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, over there in Ukraine, those numbers for men that are getting drafted to go fight are up there because there's been such a, great loss of Ukrainian soldiers. And they're doing this because a lot of these, Western nations don't have the numbers to go to, war against Russia. A lot of these Western men, they're pampered, they're soft, they're comfortable, and going to war is the last thing on their minds. So they're going to have to start forcing them. And what? Hey, those that have already served, raising up the ages to fill those ranks. And, if you go look at World War II at the end of it, Germany had lost so many men that they were recruiting men in their 60s and young boys just to fill those numbers to fight against the Russians and the Americans. This is a sign of major desperation. Veterans would form part of a strategic reserve that could be mobilized to support regular forces. The proposed reform would also change the conditions under which retired personnel can be summoned back to service. Current rules allow call-ups only in cases of national danger, great emergency, or attack, but the new framework would lower the threshold to warlike preparations, and anything could be considered a warlike preparation to justify calling up these reservists who are already retired or up in age. The measures are reportedly part of a new armed forces bill due to be introduced in Parliament. They are expected to expand the pool of service personnel by tens of thousands. The British Army is currently at its smallest size in more than 2 centuries and has fewer than 70,000 fully trained, full-time servicemen ready for frontline deployment. And Russia's, where are they at? They're at about 1.2, 1.3 million man strong army. The UK previously pledged to increase the force by 76,000 by 2029, but added only 240 soldiers over the past year. The initiative is reportedly driven by concerns that Britain could be drawn into a direct confrontation with Russia, which is exactly what's going to happen when this third woe fully kicks off. But as we can see, talks of World War III in the draft are in the air from one place of the earth unto the other, because as it says in Zephaniah chapter 3 verse 8, therefore wait ye upon me, saith Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey. So, to the sincere Akim and Akwat out there, all we have to do is continue to please Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai and stay on that straight path. We don't need to take up arms, protest, or do anything physical. Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is making these moves out here. For my determination is to gather the nations. It's the Lord's will to drum up this draft in World War III and gather these nations for that battle, that I may assemble the kingdoms to pour upon them mine indignation, even my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. And World War III is going to end with nuclear missiles being shot to the ends of the earth. But as he said, my determination is to gather the nations, to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger. This is Isaiah chapter 34. I'm going to start at verse 1. And the header reads, God's wrath against nations, against you heathen nations. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of Yahweh is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. And when you go to Joel chapter 3, which I may or may not get it in this lesson, but when you go into it, that whole chapter talks about the battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is over in Western Asia. And Jehoshaphat in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shaphat, or Yahweh's judgment. And when you go up to the first couple of verses of that chapter, it talks about how the reason the Lord is gathering these nations is because you touched the apple of his eye, the children of Israel. You scattered them abroad, with the transatlantic slave trade, and parted his land among yourselves. You've got those Amalekite Edomites over there, the 1948ers calling themselves the children of the Most High, and those Ishmaelite Palestinian Arabs, which don't belong there either. The Lord is about to kick out all squatters. And then when you go to Psalms chapter 83, it gives you a list of the heathen nations that came against the nation of Israel to cut them off. And at the top of that list is Esau, Edom. For the indignation of Yahweh is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughter, consumed them in the fire of his jealousy. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. It's going to be a great slaughter of all the heathens' militaries that are gathered over into the valley of Jehoshaphat. But that main nation that's going to receive the main slaughter is the U.S. military, which brings me to my last precept in Joel chapter 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, the North American army, the U.S. military, all branches, which with that first article we started off with, what was it talking about? New measures being put in place for automatic registration for the Selective Service, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, like a desert, the Middle East, Western Asia, the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and the main staging ground is going to be Saudi Arabia, which every major war the U.S. has launched in that region has been from Saudi Arabia because they have a lot of bases there. With his face toward the East Sea, and toward the east, what do you have? The Persian Gulf, and above the Persian Gulf, Iran, which is the main target of the U.S. and the state of Israel in that region. And his hinder part, or behind him, toward the utmost sea, which is the Red Sea, which a couple of years ago, the U.S. Navy was in there and getting hammered by those Iranian-backed Houthi Yemeni rebels. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he had done great things. Going back, what did it say? Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. That great slaughter of the heathens as militaries in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Playing back into that 2 Esdras 16, the virgins and the women and the virgins and the women and the wives shall mourn because their husbands were killed in the wars. And what? Thy young men shall be slaughtered by the sword and in the wars, as it said in Isaiah chapter 3. But that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. So we can clearly see we are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babol, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.